African history, the 1966 Kabaka constitutional crisis. The 1966 Kabaka's last constitutional crisis. This crisis took place on 24th May 1966 when the National Army, on Albert's orders led by the late commander Idi Amin Dada, attacked the Kabaka's palace in Mengo. There was some fighting between national forces, Albert and the defenders of Kabaka for 6 hours on a rainy afternoon. The Kabaka forces were defeated and he fled to exile in London, where he died in 1969. The crisis, however, didn't only involve the attack of the palace, but also 5 ministers of the cabinet had been arrested for betraying government. Causes of the Kabaka crisis. The desire by Buganda to secede from the rest of Uganda caused the crisis. It ought to be noted that Buganda enjoyed a special position and hence demanded separate independence, which Sir Andrew Cohen rejected. Also, when Kabaka Mutesa Roman II came back from England in 1955, he had been made a constitutional monarchy with reduced powers, and the 1962 constitution gave the Prime Minister Albert more executive powers. The Buganda Lukieko therefore conflicted with the central government of Albert, leading to the crisis. The British influence within the Buganda Agreement of 1900 and the Namaim Agreement of 1955 caused the crisis. In 1900, the powers of the Kabaka were reduced and Buganda granted semi-federal status, and the kingdom's failure to work with the Protectorate led to the deportation of the Kabaka by Sir Andrew Cohen in 1953. In 1955 still, the Namaim Agreement made Mutesa Roman II a constitutional monarchy to serve through ministers, but when Buganda attempted to forward federal aspirations, it led to the conflicts with the central government of Albert, causing the crisis. The 1964 land referendum about the lost counties caused the crisis. According to the first constitution of 1962, it had been agreed that a referendum about the 2 counties of Buyoga and Bugangezi was to be held 2 years after independence. This was to make the people of Bunyoro to decide whether to stay in Buganda or go back to Bunyoro. Kabaka Mutesa Roman II and his Lukieko refused to sign the paper sanctioning the referendum, which made Albert to use his powers, and people voted to go back. This led to the conflicts between Albert and Kabaka, hence leading to the crisis in 1966. The dual capacities of Kabaka Mutesa as President of Uganda and Kabaka of Buganda caused the crisis. Mutesa Roman II put the interests of the kingdom at the forefront at the expense of the country entirely. The Lukieko ill-advised the Kabaka that he presides over all the areas politically and culturally. The Kabaka also refused to sign the referendum because he wanted to protect the interest of Buganda, yet people were to enjoy their rights as citizens, hence the immaterial and personal interests of the kingdom by Mutesa led to the crisis. The termination of the KYUPC alliance also caused the crisis. The alliance was forged on the eve of independence to defeat DP of Benedict Kiwanuka, who was also aspiring to become a president of Uganda. The KYUPC alliance was, however, a matter of convenience that didn't last for long, based on political and practical manipulation. Disagreements ensued as to who had more powers between the PM and president. Albert advocated for a socialist and unitary government, while Kabaka Mutesa wanted to preserve the kingdom, leading to the crisis. The conflicts between UPC party accelerated the crisis of 1966. Albert faced many challenges in UPC party, and in 1964 John Edward Kakonch was replaced by Grace Ibingira as the Secretary-General, which annoyed other party members. Also in 1965, many UPC officers like Ali Kurndike, Kintimusok, Baidandi Esali were expelled from UPC. These collaborated with Mutesa Roman II, leading to the crisis of 1966. The division in UPC as a party caused the crisis. It ought to be noted that there existed many groups and each had different objectives. There was a group that favoured a one party of the socialists led by John Edward Kakonch Youth League and sided with Albert. Another group was led by Grace Ibingira, a northerner by birth and a Muganda by adoption, advocated for capitalism and strict following of democratic principles. This led to clashes within the party that occasioned animosity, hence the crisis. The gold scandal of 1966 caused the crisis. The scandal involved Albert and his army commander Eminent Felix Anama and Adog Nikaon. It was alleged that these carried out secret business of trade dealing in gold in exchange for coffee in DRC without the consent of the members of parliament. This was a lucrative business that caused public outcry, and David Archin, leader of opposition in parliament, tabled the motion to investigate into this illegal trade when Albert was on an up-country tour. Albert reacted by dispatching army groups in parliament to arrest the suspects, and those who supported the bill were charged with treason, leading to the crisis. The removal of privileges from Uganda government facilitated the occurrence of the crisis of 1966. The pigeonhole constitution of Albert annoyed Buganda, and Mutesa Roman II, as it declared Uganda a united country, deprived the Kabaka of all the privileges, including the right to send and directly elected members to parliament. The Buganda kingdom would no longer appoint civil servants to the different posts, and the Melo land system where the chiefs got money was abolished. The emergence of educated elites from other parts of Uganda. These had hated the Buganda's special position in Uganda and they were from the north, east and western parts, and they also formed parties like UPU for East. African history, the 1966 Kabaka constitutional crisis. Federalism of the Baganda. This made Obote to make a coalition with KY to assist him undermine the cultural leadership which gave rise to the crisis. The conflict between monarchism and republicanism also fueled the crisis of 1966. The interested parties of the Ganda, Banyoro, Ankole, Busoga and Toro were in for monarchical rule and determined to preserve their cultural institutions. The increasing grip of the nationalists like Obote preferred republicanism, and upon becoming the prime minister, he sought to abolish monarchism, which led to the crisis of 1966. The sour relationship between KY and DP worsened the position on the government and occasioned the crisis of 1966. Benedict Kiwanuka DP accused KY members of not supporting him, yet he was a Muganda. Therefore, DP members ganged up and opposed the constitution. Kiwanuka even commented that he preferred death to being led unconstitutionally. This made Obote to react and deport the Kabaka for the second time, hence the crisis of 1966. The impact of the Kabaka's letter to the UN also explains the cause of the crisis of 1966. It is said that Mutis Aruman II was lamenting about what had happened as his powers as his presidency had been usurped by Obote, hence he requested the UN to intervene and stop Obote from violating the rights of the president. This letter scared Obote, who acted very fast by deploying the army against Mutis before the UN would intervene, hence the crisis of 1966. The clashing personalities of Obote and Mutis Aruman II also caused the crisis of 1966. It is noted that by virtue of Uganda's interest, Mutis Aruman II was compelled to be adamant and conservative, while Obote was optimistic, calculative, shrewd, and foresighted. Therefore, Obote made an alliance with KY to have executive powers as PM. He used his powers to recruit his tribe mates into the army, which assured him support he needed to attack the Mengo Palace in 1966, hence the crisis. The premature independence given to Uganda in 1962 equally made the crisis of 1966 inevitable. This was done without passing the Ugandan leaders through a political laboratory for practical leadership. This was exhibited by the unpractical and unprincipled alliance with selfish interests that later clashed and the crisis ensued. It's also on record that Sir Andrew Cohen remarked that, "I thought we still had ample time ahead of us." The immediate cause of the crisis was the quit note issued by the Buganda Lugiko. This was issued on 21st May 1966, demanding the central government and Obote to leave Buganda soil within a 10-day ultimatum. Obote was also supposed to transfer the capital to another part of the country, hence the document made Obote to deploy his army officers under the command of Idi Amin to attack the palace and capture the Kabaka. The palace was captured and Mutis fled to Burundi and then to London, only to die in 1969. Effects of the Kabaka crisis of 1966. It led to the flight of Kabaka Mutis Aruman II to exile in London through Burundi, where he died in 1969. His body was brought back for state burial when Amin was the president. It led to the collapse of the Buganda kingdom, which had been in existence for over 500 years. It perished and was only reinstated in 1993 by the NRM government after many years in limbo. The Kabaka's palace was turned into a military barracks for over 30 years when the kingdom was not in existence. It made many Buganda ministers also to go to exile for their dear lives as they were being hunted by Obote's regime, e.g. Abramayanya and Kanji, who was the prime minister of Buganda's Lukiko. Obote declared a state of emergency over the country and Buganda in particular, and this was to last for 6 months. However, he kept on postponing up to 1971 when he was overthrown by Idi Amin in a self-styled manner. The crisis led to the abolition of kingdoms in Uganda. The 1967 constitution promulgated that all kingdoms, i.e. Buganda, Ankole, Toro, Busoga, were to be abolished, and it led to the arrest of cultural leaders who attempted to oppose e.g. Tito Onirum IV, Gashanga and Wilberforce and Adiopa Basoga. The crisis made Uganda to be declared a republic by the Constitution of 1967. This made Obote to assume full executive powers up to the time of the military coup of 1971. This very constitution had been referred to as the Pigeonhole Constitution, where members of parliament never took part but only told to pick their coppers. It led to the banning of political parties and their activities, and UPC was declared a single party which was to be contained in the Common Man's Charter of 1969. Its aim was to guide Uganda towards the socialist principles related to the Arusha Declaration of 1967. The Buganda monarchy property was declared state property, including the King's Palace. Mengo, which was the major palace of the Kabaka, became a barracks. Biolanj became the Republican House, and the kingdom's court. Mengo also remained state-owned. It led to the death of many innocent Ugandans through military confrontation between the central government's army and the Kabaka's forces, and others died on their way to exile. Uganda became divided into many administrative structures, e.g. East Mingo, West Masaka and Mubend, and these later became districts. African history, the 1966 Kabaka constitutional crisis. It led to the militarization of Uganda's politics. This is attributed to the successfully planned crisis that saw Mutisa Roman II out of government. Idi Amin also felt confident to topple the government of Obote in 1971. Brasilia, Okololot were also organized military due to Walwai. Museveni organized a war that brought him to rule from 198–1996 when general democratic elections were organized in Uganda. This crisis led to demotions and promotions in the army. E.g., Shaban Opolot was demoted from being an army commander, and in 1966 Idi Amin took over, which brought bickering and intrigue within the central government. Uganda drifted to dictatorial leadership of Obote and Amin. These two leaders banned political parties. Obote declared Uganda a single-party state under the dictatorship of UPC, while Amin was an outright dictator without